What a game between the Rams and the Seahawks. We had Demarcus Robinson catching a game-winning touchdown pass from Matt Stafford. Game goes to overtime. Kyron Williams' streak ends. Cooper Kupp, tons of targets. But Coop, the story of the game, Jackson Smith-Njigba. JSN goes absolutely nuts. How excited should fantasy managers be about JSN? This is the first time he's ever finished as the wide receiver 1 overall on the week. This is his highest scoring game as a pro. Is this a sign of things to come or a one-off that requires some caution?
I think redraft managers should be excited. Dynasty managers should be very excited. I wrote about this offseason a scenario that we use to find breakouts, and it's happened multiple times. Basically, you take a high-efficiency slot receiver or slot receivers where you believe in the talent, where they're kind of pure slot receivers, and then you stash them away or you draft them in redraft in the years that you think they become full-time players, right? In his rookie year, CeeDee Lamb quietly played 94% of his snaps from the slot. The next year, he became a full-time player. Boom, wheels up. Chris Godwin, he had to wait till year 3 behind Mike Evans and Deshaun Jackson. And then when he finally broke out, boom, wide receiver 2 overall that. We were looking at guys like JSN, Jaden Reed, Josh Downs. Guys like Jaden Reed and Josh Downs are still part-time players. The flippening hasn't happened for them where they've become full-time players. But JSN, potentially this week, might have shown enough where when they come back, they can't put him back in the bottle. They decide to have DK Metcalf be a full-time player, JSN be a full-time player, right? Operating like Chris Godwin or Cooper Kupp, where he moves into the slot for 3 wide receiver sets, but stays out wide for 2 wide receiver sets. And then it's finally time for Tyler Lockett to play a partial snap share. I mean, just last year, we saw at the beginning of the year with the Vikings, it was Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison as the 2 guys. Sorry, Justin Jefferson and KJ Osborne as the 2 guys, Jordan Addison as the part-time guy. Once JJ got hurt, Addison earned that role. And when they came back from break, guess what? KJ Osborne was the part-time guy, and Jefferson and Addison were the full-time guys. We might see that exact thing happen here when DK Metcalf comes back. If it doesn't happen, JSN is still a guy that you can start. But if he is a full-time guy, weeks like this could happen all the time.
Yeah, I mean, he went full-on Cooper Kupp. Like, he looked like peak Cooper Kupp yesterday. And I think that with Seattle, in the past, I think it was like a cultural thing where they had to run the football. They didn't want to fully embrace the pass. But with Ryan Grubb, he seems like the kind of guy that's going to go with what works. We've already seen certain players take steps forward in terms of their receiving usage, whether it's a running back. So I agree with you, Coop. I think JSN is one where a lot of times you would sell high on a performance like this, but this could be a sign of like multiple wide receiver 1 weeks to come, and he can absolutely thrive next to DK Metcalf. I'd like to see fewer targets for these tight ends. I mean, watching AJ Barner get like 7 targets, give those to somebody else. For me, my takeaway is we're kind of staring at something historically very, very random and historically great, where you have Lamar Jackson and you have Derrick Henry as the quarterback 1 and the RB1 on the season. Coop, it's week 10. This could actually happen this week, where we've talked about you're the free agent running back, year of all these older running backs doing well, but it's Derrick Henry is going to finish as a top 5 back once again on the week. This week, gets in the end zone twice. Lamar Jackson, 3 touchdown passes. And right now, these 2 guys are tops at their position. You need to go way, way back to find some two teammates finishing inside the top 5. Last year was close. You had Brock Purdy finished like QB6, depending on your scoring. CMC was RB1 overall. So San Francisco gave you elite running back production and very, very good quarterback production. You've got to go back to 2013 with Peyton Manning and Noshawn Marino, where Peyton was 1 and Noshawn was running back 4, to see this sort of impact. And why should they slow down? I mean, this is an offense that's an absolute machine. They're leading the NFL in yards per game. My only fear, Coop, would be that Baltimore becomes locked in to a certain playoff slot without potential for the number 1 overall seed because Kansas City runs away with it, and they sit Derrick Henry for a couple games, let him rest for the playoffs. That's sort of my only fear. I do think Lamar Jackson will get the QB1 overall, but the big dog, Derrick Henry, he's got a little bit of a cushion right now. And with the way the Saints season is going, like Alvin Kamara gets 9 targets, so he's going to be pretty locked in. But you have to think maybe the massive spike week opportunities not going to be there for Kamara like they are for Henry with the quality of the offense. I'm sure we're going to talk about another older running back that could challenge as well, and maybe a younger one too, Coop. But for me, it's let's celebrate that you have two teammates leading QB1, leading RB1. It's remarkable to have that at week 10.
Yeah, it's incredible. And, you can't horse collar this guy. Now you can't hip drop tackle this guy. I don't know how you do take down Derrick Henry now in the modern NFL, right? It's just, he's just a different animal out there. It's incredible. And I'll tell you, the other guy we have to talk about is Saquon Barkley, right? I actually have a dynasty team with Henry and Barkley. I ain't selling. I'm pushing the chips, and it's working out so far. If you're out there in a league like that or a redraft league, you're probably doing really well with Derrick Henry. To Theo's point, maybe you do add Keaton Mitchell, obviously as a handcuff potential, but also, hey, if they want to, down the stretch, potentially rest him, I mean, somebody's got to play that game. So just something to think about in those leagues. But Saquon Barkley, man, has been incredible. And every year over at Fantasy Alarm, I do a couple things before the season. I do a target totem poll where I basically lay out what I think the pecking order will be for each of these teams and kind of color code it based on how many receptions I think these guys get, et cetera. And I also do a thing called the running back questionnaire, where I go through and ask 5 questions and say, okay, who's the best guy on the team at goal line? Who's the best guy for 2-minute drill? Who's the best guy for eating clock? Who's the best guy for third downs, right? And lay that all out. With a guy like Saquon Barkley, there's very few guys that check every single box, that can run real high A-dot routes like we saw this week when he caught the touchdown pass, that is good in the goal line, is good on third down, is good in every way. And this week it all came together with him making arguably the best run that I've seen since the Marshawn Lynch beast quake, right? Like, I've never seen a reverse hurdle. Have you ever seen that before? I've never seen such a thing.
Coop, you're selling yourself short. I know when you play pickup, you reverse hurdling dudes. Come on. Don't.
Well, that's the thing is I can't see myself. So obviously I've never seen.
Yeah. You can't look in a mirror while you're playing ball.
And they're not filming our backyard games, our Thanksgiving games. So obviously it's one of my moves. But I've never seen with my eyes somebody else pull it off until this week. The reverse hurdle, dude, unbelievable. What are you thinking? That takes some stones to just jump blindly into the night. And that dude didn't even touch him. The craziest part of that play, please go back and watch it, because if you've seen just the GIF or the slow-mo of the reverse hurdle, he juked another guy before that, hit another dude with the spin move, and then pulled that off. Saquon Barkley absolutely locked in, and he landed in the best possible spot. The only thing that can hold him back is that stupid tush push. But you just gotta deal with it, right? It is what it is. It's part of the game. Touchdowns that would have gone to him otherwise, but I mean, I don't care. He's locked into every lineup. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, Saquon, obviously, like, this guy's going to affect leagues. Such a great player. Really, we've talked about it, Coop, the year of the free agent running back. I think when we look back on this season, that's going to be the takeaway is how many older free agent running backs did you draft? Joe Mixon continuing to shine, Tony Pollard, Aaron Jones, all these guys. But it really comes down to Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. I think that the market didn't quite reflect what the ceilings could be for these two guys. And shout out to you. You were all over Alvin Kamara all preseason as well, but he was obviously not with a new team, but sort of in the same light where people want what's new and they don't always want what's right in front of them. And Saquon was right in front of them for this sort of a smash season. We talked about in the preseason, Coop, when we podcast together, about how this is the best offensive line Saquon's ever played with. This is the best quarterback Saquon's ever played with. This is the best set of weapons he's ever played alongside. So everything's sort of lined up for him to continue to thrive. And also, Coop, yesterday gets his season high in terms of receiving yardage as well. I mean, an absolute machine. So, yeah, we're all over Saquon Barkley for the rest of the season. Buy high wherever you can. And for me, my last takeaway is sort of a underrated wide receivers. I think that the market hasn't moved on where some of these guys are. We've told you to grab some of these guys for weeks ago on the waiver wire, some recently on the waiver wire, but sort of new values that we need to embrace for the second half of the season. You talked about JSN, how he's ascending, certainly some younger players, but two somewhat veteran wide receivers, second-year player in Cedric Tillman, and then another free agent in Darnell Mooney, how these two guys are really, really trending up. Darnell Mooney with another really big game. Darnell Mooney actually is second among all wide receivers in catches over 20 yards. He has 5 touchdown catches, which is a career high, Coop. And Drake London seems like he avoided anything massive with the hip injury, but there's still a chance that they're cautious with him. Maybe it's a pain thing. Maybe he misses a game. And I think Darnell Mooney's a guy where he's really going to give you sort of top 15 production for the season. Like, Kyle Pitts takes a huge step forward, but Kyle Pitts is certainly not the number 2 target on this team. It's really a very consolidated tree with London, a lot of Mooney, and a lot of Bijan Robinson, and then Pitts will be there because he's a tight end. But for me, it's Darnell Mooney is a massive value, and the other massive value, Cedric Tillman. And Cedric Tillman's one where even in a game where, this was a disappointing game overall for the Browns, and this is one where Tillman still shined. 6 catches, 75 receiving yards, 11 targets. Coop, this is 3 straight games now. And it's not just he's scoring on some like random long touchdown. Right. Cedric Tillman is absorbing volume. He's averaging 22.2 points per game without Amari Cooper, a 24% target share, and a 35% air yard share. This player is for real. He's a second-year player. I know there's some people out there trying to say this guy's Nico Collins. I'm not going that crazy because his pure like straight line 40 speed is not super elite. But otherwise, athletically, he's right there. He's big, 6'3", 215, runs fast enough, jumps high enough, and now has a situation where he's gaining value in Dynasty and helping redraft managers. Coop, I think he's one of the best waiver wire ads of the year. And if your league is shallow, Mooney could have been a waiver wire ad as well. So it's waiver wire, wide receivers, absolutely in great shape over the second half of the year. Cedric Tillman, Darnell Mooney, embrace the new values.
It's so funny, too, because, and again, zero RB is a sound strategy, especially if you just kind of let the draft unfold in front of you and lean into it if you have to, right? Like, I like it as a pivot, but the whole idea of the strategy is to avoid running backs because they're fragile, and also because running backs come out of the woodwork and can be added off waivers at a higher clip. This year, we kind of got hit with the rug pull here, where it's the wide receivers that are getting Ayuk and Godwin and all these guys, and the running backs, knock on wood, have actually stayed pretty largely healthy besides Christian McCaffrey, who didn't even play a game to start the year. And these wide receivers are coming out of the woodwork, where typically we don't get these Amon-Ra St. Brown type guys or Hunter Renfrow that one year where down the stretch they came out of nowhere and were top 5 wide receivers. You very rarely see that because typically wide receivers get an opportunity straight from the rip because there's 2-3 guys on the field all the time. It's so rare to have a Cedric Tillman type player that is behind another player and gets his shot down the stretch that if you did scoop him up, boy, you got to be pumped right now, man. And I'll tell you, you and I kind of talked about this. It's honestly not crazy to throw out trade offers for Tillman and Mooney because the people that picked him up might not even realize quite what they have.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And it's sort of the name brands. There's guys that are way bigger name brands that are really closer to being wide receiver 3s than Tillman and Mooney right now. So absolutely love it, Coop. And also Tillman, it's funny, we did this waiver wire show and Tillman happened to pop the week that it was the run on Tampa Bay wide receivers. So a lot of people went Jalen McMillan, and then it was the run on the San Francisco wide receivers. And that story hasn't been told completely. Like Ricky Pearsall or Juwan Jennings could make a major impact coming out of the bye week. You might have gotten Cedric Tillman as like waiver wire priority number 4 or waiver priority number 5 in your league. So Tillman is that rare player that you didn't have to break fab on. And he's gonna give you huge returns on. So yeah, hats off to you if you have Cedric Tillman. Coop, every week we are going to give you a player to trade for here. What is your player that fantasy managers should go out and trade and get?
Hey, I'm going to hit you with the rare one here. A lot of times we say, okay, buy low on this guy, right? Or a lot of times we say, hey, grab this guy because, his matchups are good down the stretch and you can get him for a reasonable deal. I'm hitting you with the rare, buy high. Pay the price, dude. Whatever it takes to get Devon Achane, pay that price, man, because this guy is electric. He is amazing. And folks might not be putting him yet in that category with the very tippity top guys, the Derrick Henrys and the Saquon Barkleys, or even a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs. Because Raheem Mostert's there, there's still a glimmer of ability to buy this guy when he could be the RB1 rest of the way. It doesn't matter if there's another guy there that's also potentially scoring touchdowns or playing well in Raheem Mostert. This is a potential 2017, Kamara, Mark Ingram situation where it doesn't matter if Mark Ingram was RB7. Kamara was so good and so dynamic with the ball in his hands, catching the ball out of the backfield that he was RB3 that year. They were both RB. So Mostert can score his touchdowns, do whatever. This guy is a threat to score at any given moment, and he's actually playing legitimate wide receiver slot snaps, which is like a myth in fantasy football. We always say, oh, well, what if what if Kareem Hunt were to play slot, or what if this guy were to play slot? Tony Pollard's going to play slot this year. It never happens. This is the first time that we have a guy that's actually on pace as a running back to have 100, routes run from the slot. The last time it happened was 2000. I think it was 2018 or 19. Tyreek Cohen was the last time we saw that. So it's a rare opportunity for a guy that's being used all over the field in an offense that uses a ton of pre-snap motion and just puts him in position to succeed, and he has been succeeding. So go get Devon Achane. He's breaking all the metrics. He's breaking all the spreadsheets.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I mean, this is one where Tua Tagovailoa has really elevated him more so than anybody else. It hasn't happened with Tyreek Hill. I think Tyreek Hill, it's almost like a new normal. There'll be a spike week or two, but Tyreek Hill is really giving you like low-end wide receiver 2 production rather than the high-end wide receiver 1 production we were expecting. It's really become, this offense has evolved into a Devon Achane offense. They get it in Miami. And Coop, he has more receptions than Breece Hall this year. He has the third most receptions at the running back position, and he's played one game fewer than Breece Hall. So, like Devon Achane, when the season's over, he's got to catch Kamara, he's got to catch Bijan Robinson, but he might end up with the most receptions of any single running back this year, because that's really the show in Miami. And I absolutely love it that you're looking to trade for him. And I'm happy you're giving a buy high, because I'm also giving a buy high. I think we talked about Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, about how impactful those guys are, but it's almost becoming like a big three in Baltimore. And you weren't really noticing it with Zay Flowers because the touchdowns weren't there. Yesterday was the spike week that everyone's been waiting for. Denver was one of the stingiest defenses in football, period, and especially when conceding touchdowns to wide receivers. They had allowed almost no touchdown catches to wide receivers all season. They give up 2 yesterday to Zay Flowers. 5 catches, 127 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Gives you almost 30 PPR points. And it was this touchdown before the half, Coop, that really, I think, opens up some people's eyes. Zay Flowers catches the ball in the middle of the field, really a get-out-of-bounds type route, and instead he cuts it up off the sideline, and then he houses it for a 50-plus yard reception. Almost every single player is getting out of bounds with that play. Zay Flowers, you give that guy too much cushion, and he took it to the house. You're a Boston guy. That looked like Boston College Zay Flowers when he'd have video game-like plays that almost were too good to be true. And then, of course, he's had this rise to the first round. I think you're finally starting to see it. Over the last 4 weeks, 19 points, 22.4 points, had the 1-0 type game. It was like a 4-pointer, and then 18.5 points, and now a 30-pointer. This guy is locked in. It's really a big three in Baltimore. I think Zay Flowers is a guy that is ascending, and even though he had a spike week, there's still managers that are not going to rate him quite where he needs to be. This is an explosive player. More touchdowns are coming.
Yeah, and I think people were kind of dismissing the reports by Josina Anderson about Deontay Johnson's role and what it would be. And she was pretty clear that like Zay Flowers and Bateman's role wouldn't be touched. And what we kind of saw this week is that was true. I know he was on a limited snap count, but most of the snaps that came for Deontay Johnson came at the expense of Nelson Aguilar, and they actually came at the expense of Isaiah Likely. And I think this team is kind of saying, as much as I love the tight end, they're kind of realizing, okay, we have 2 tight ends that are playing wide receiver for most of their snaps in Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. What if we just got a wide receiver to play those snaps? So I'm not, if you might be able to get a little bit of a discount if people are worried about Deontay Johnson's role ascending. I think it's a problem for Nelson Aguilar. I think that's an Isaiah Likely problem. Could even become a Rashad Bateman problem. I don't think it's a Zay Flowers problem.
100%. Coop, every week we give our hammers. This is a player that you think is going to absolutely smash in week 10. Who is it for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going straight to the top. And it might seem obvious, but Jamar Chase is in an absolute slam spot here. Like the hammer is coming down in a big way. You have to use him in DFS, pay whatever price it is, because the Ravens have been kind of leaky against the pass. Marlon Humphrey's been banged up. The last time they played this team, Joe Burrow went bonkers, throwing 2 touchdown passes to Chase, 2 touchdown passes to Higgins. And this week, coming in, we don't know if Higgins is going to be there. So Chase could come out. I mean, dude, this could be like a 3-4 touchdown absolute crush spot for Jamar Chase in this must-win matchup with the Ravens.
Yeah, I love it. And yesterday it could have been even more, but Mike Gesicki had the 2 touchdowns. So, like, Gesicki without T. Higgins, that's a whole nother one. I'm sure we'll talk about him on this week's Waiver Wire show a little bit. But Jamar Chase, absolute smash. And for me, like, you're going to go with a high-end guy. I'm going to go super high-end as well. I'm going to go with George Kittle because I love backing players coming out of a bye week. And Coop, The Tampa Bay Buccaneers play on Monday Night Football against the Kansas City Chiefs. So we're going to have a short week for Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is going to host San Francisco, and Tampa Bay will put up some points at home. So for me, this is a smash spot for George Kittle. George Kittle, since week 2, has not scored fewer than 14.5 PPR points. That's just insane. He's leading the tight end position in catches over 20 yards, leading the tight end position in receiving touchdowns, and he's averaging 18 points per game. We are close to a 20-point per game season for George Kittle. This is like vintage George Kittle, the best tight end value on the board this year, because he was going behind a number of younger guys who really haven't delivered at this level. And you have no Brandon Ayuk for the entire second half of the season. So for me, it's George Kittle coming out of a bye week. All of the metrics are there. I think everything is going to continue to improve when we get there after the bye week. I think smash week after smash week, Coop, he's got a 26% target share. I mean, everything for George Kittle is shaping up to have a monster smash year, and you're going to back him this week. Go ahead and build a DFS lineup, Coop, with George Kittle and Jamar Chase, and then make sure you send us a nice little message. Maybe Venmo us a little something if you hit that. We'll see when we
get paid. I got to figure out who the pay downs are going to be, because those are going to be pay ups big time. But yeah, I mean, George Kittle, one of the few guys that can rip off big chunk plays from the tight end position. And like you said, hypothetically, before the season, we were worried this team was going to be low volume. We were worried about Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and Christian McCaffrey, but there's no Deebo Samuel, might not be Christian McCaffrey. I mean, it's wheels up for this guy, and he's going to go play in the nice weather on the beautiful Bermuda grass at Raymond James Stadium this week. So
love it. Coop, what do you got this week? Anything else?
Yeah, I'll be on SiriusXM channel 87 tonight, or Monday if it is, and then Thursday and Friday, as well as Sunday morning. We'll be doing a bunch of that. You can check out all my articles over at Fantasy Alarm, as always, and the Fantasy Alarm YouTube channel. What about you, buddy?
Yeah, same as you, grinding. We're week 10. We're nearing the finish line here. Going to put in the work for sure. Check out most of my work over at Player Profiler, articles, podcasts. Check out my Waiver Wire show. Check out my Sleeper show. I have a couple of other pods there this week. Check out School of Scott over at Fantasy Points, and check out my article in The Athletic. Coop and I are going to continue crushing it right here. Make sure you're hitting that like button, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. Helps us a lot. We'll see you soon.